Fireside Palaver, episode 23. This episode, we're going to be doing our review of Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. You see that, David? I did it. I didn't even have to.
You did it. It was perfect.
So I started recording because we were kind of having a conversation that I wanted to put at the beginning of the episode, and that's that I feel like there's so much to talk about in this book that that I almost feel like we don't have anything to talk about. We can't possibly talk about everything that came up, and I didn't write things down as I came across them.
Right.
This is actually like a really spiritually deep book. This is a really good.
It very much is. and this is one of those books where, we've kind of gone back and forth with some of these about talking like a summary and talking about, different aspects of the thing. But this book, out of all the books we've done so far, I think has more of it's 100% like a metaphorical
philosophical book. Yeah.
Yeah. This is everything in this book has meaning. It's obviously the plot means something, but it's more of the author's take on humanity, religion, science, all this stuff. It's definitely we listen to King, and sometimes King says a story is just a story. This is definitely not a story, it's just a story. This is, break it down, and this means this, and
that's kind of what I mean is I feel like it's almost overwhelming because it's there's no possible way
to cover
right? all the themes that are in it. But I really, just in general, my sort of elevator review is I really love this book, and it was a breath of fresh air after reading all the fantasy we'd read. And I enjoy fantasy, but this was my original nerd fandom and
yes,
book reading and consuming of pop culture has always been sci-fi. And this really fit the niche really good.
Yeah, it definitely.
When we
10 out of 10 would recommend.
Oh yeah, for sure. When we did the last sort of touch base, I had read the first half of the book and you'd already finished, and I think at that time I was surprised that you kind of sided more with enjoying the spider story
Yes.
rather than the humans. And after you said that, it made me take more notice to the spider chapters, which I was kind of just blowing through before. I was kind of taking the spider chapters almost like little National Geographic chapters, they're much like the way it's presented, especially in the first part of the book before you really kind of get to know Portia and Bianca and the characters on the spider side. It really is
Right.
very National Geographic-esque. It's like Portia is a such and such of her arachnid breed, and it's kind of told in that way. And so I didn't feel the same personal connection to that side as I did to the humans. But the humans basically never change. So the human side of the story is it's really great that we get to follow these human characters as they go into cryo sleep and then wake from cryo sleep, and it's the same characters show up in sort of each iteration of them waking from cryo sleep. And I thought that was a really good tool to carry the reader through the story, because we can identify with the humans more than we can the spiders, obviously. But
Right.
that's actually I don't know. That's questionable. I think sometimes maybe you can identify with the spiders.
Well, yeah. I mean, as it goes along, you start siding with the spiders a lot.
But the main complaint I would have about the human side is that Holston. I like Holston. I loved Lane. Lane was a great character.
Yes.
I like their relationship, and but it's not like we see them go over this journey where they change by the end. I mean, essentially, Holston is the same character at the end of the book as he is at the beginning of the book. I mean,
one of the interesting aspects of the human thing
Mm-hmm.
is like when you say that he's the same, like, I mean, the book takes place over like 3,000 years roughly,
Yeah,
but
it's hard to
the,
tell, but yeah.
but the actual time that Holston is awake
It's like 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks.
is like 2, 3 weeks. Yeah, exactly. So like
Yeah,
the reason he doesn't change over the books is because like he's asleep a lot,
that's
and
a
then
good
like
point. Yeah.
um and then the other thing with you
Well,
know about not changing or like humanity in a sense not changing as
yeah.
you go through this book, and like they wake up and then they go to sleep for a couple hundred years and then wake up and they go back to sleep, and like each time Holston wakes up there's always something crazy going on.
Yeah.
But like his point is that no matter how and what's happening, the humans haven't changed. They're still like warring with each other, finding things to get after each other about. Like
Yeah.
it's even going so far as back to when you have like what do they call it? The old empire, or I think that's what
Yeah,
they
the old
call it. Like
empire. Yeah, yeah.
you've got literally the fall of civilizations, rise of new civilization, the fall of civilization,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still the same theme. Even when after the first fall, basically everyone's gone and they come up again, they're still the same.
Yeah.
Like the Earth freezes or whatever after I'm assuming it was a large nuclear war and they had the nuclear winter, and they were bombing each other with uh biological
And
weapons and all this stuff. And then when they come back, they're doing the same thing, and that's basically why they have to leave Earth too. But like,
and it's still
um,
very much so like similar to what we see in the spider civilization, in that it's like religion versus science. Like
yes,
at the beginning of the book, whenever Kern is giving the whole, like, she sort of gives like a sort of brief history, up to that point. And yeah, you've got the nuns, which are the Inuins, but of course it's it seems like a reference to actual religious nuns, fits in the theme. And there's the people that believe that what they're doing on this terraforming project is playing God, and that it's a natural, and so yeah, it's not only history repeating itself amongst the humans, but we also see that transcribed into the spider culture too. Only the spiders, you find out by the end of the book, the spiders have actually kind of like learned from their history, maybe, because
right,
it's I don't know that I necessarily believe that it's like, oh, the spiders just had such an epiphany that the humans hadn't. I think that the difference is the humans the humans' first reaction to something was to kill it. Like it seemed
kill it.
like every time the
Yeah,
humans had faced some problem, it was like, well, we can probably overpower it in some way. We can kill it. And the spiders went through that, but they also learned this utilitarian thing. Like they said, well, if we kill the ants, we can't use them, you know?
right,
And so they said, instead, they said, well, let's learn how we can exploit this situation and use the
exactly.
ants. And so they were still kind of following their natural instinct. It's just instead of wanting to kill the humans, they decided it would be better to find out how they could use the humans, and into more of a utility. Um, so
Right, and that also brings in, you talk about religion, because there's the whole part about, you know, like you said, like they're essentially creating life. The purpose of kind of the backstory for anybody listening is they've created this virus that basically jumpstarts evolution, and they're planning on taking monkeys on this terraform planet, using the virus, speeds up evolution, and basically creating a more perfect human in essence. But along with that, like they're also like what I put here. Well, number one, monkeys. That was weird because humans didn't necessarily evolve from monkeys. It's a shared ancestor that humans evolved from. So I was trying to figure out like what this creature was going to be that they were going to evolve from monkeys, because it wouldn't necessarily be human.
I think that the thought was that sure, primates evolved from a similar ancestor, and they just I think she thought
right
this would spur along, but yeah, they wouldn't be exactly humans. But you know what I kept thinking was going to happen? This is kind of related to that topic. What I kept thinking was going to happen, you know how the spiders kept interacting with some other species that was in the ocean, and they never played a part in the story? I thought the conclusion of the book was going to be that whatever that was gets up and walks out of the ocean, you know?
There you go. From the primordial ooze.
Right.
But but along with, religion, there's other human aspects that fall into the spider category. And when you talk about the ants, like essentially they enslave the ants.
Yeah.
They conquer them, and then they turn them into slaves to do their building and all the grunt work with the, if they're going to war, it's the ants that are the main force and things like that. And then also, there's the big gender issue that carries on through this book, because in the spider world, the females have that role reversal. They're in charge, and the male species is way less dominant. They don't have right, because they go into a lot of that stuff about
it makes sense. It makes sense too with spiders, because with a lot of insects that the female kills the male. So like it makes sense, and I like how that also played a part in their society, that they had this like primal urge to kill the male they mated with, but because they had evolved beyond that primal necessity, what do they call it nowadays? Lizard brain versus human brain, or whatever. Like they were learning to overcome that primal urge, because they decided it was better for society to better support the males than to bite their head off as soon as they had sex with them.
They had the thing where was it what's the male? Fabian.
Fabian, yeah.
Like Fabian is like a very smart spider, male spider, and she thinks a couple times, like, well, do I kill this guy or whatever? But then you find out that like there's these male spiders that live in basically like the dungeons of their society, and they're pointless, they're useless, so we can kill them as much as we need to.
Yeah,
it's just we gotta keep these guys separate.
Well, that whole concept of like, because there's even Portia even like thinks to herself, well, Fabian is different because he's smart, he's not like the other male spiders. And I think that obviously this is illustrating like how like racists or bigots of any kind, it's a lot of times they may have a person in their life and they look at and they say, well, that person must be different in some way than all the others of this sex that I have. I've made my mind up about an entire group of people until I meet one of them and I realize that one is not like the way I decided they were, but he's different than the others, so that was a really cool way for them to kind of explore that in the spider lore. But what about ant computers? So the ants, they not only enslave the ants and use them, but by the end of the book, they're using ants as computers, and they even upload Dr. Kern's consciousness, or her computer AI version of herself, into a computer of ants for me, this was the hardest thing for me to like sort of wrap my
Like
mind around. This was the most,
conceptualize.
yeah,
Yeah.
this was like the hardest. This and the idea that the spiders are all talking to each other by tapping their feet and
By
stuff.
tapping the webs. Yes.
Yeah, that was the two things that I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to go with it because I don't think I could really figure this out.
Right. You know, well, so a couple of things that took a while to figure out. One was, and I still don't know the time sequence because, like,
Yeah,
they just he ends a chapter and goes to the next chapter, and you're just guessing, like, okay, this has got to be like a
yeah,
couple hundred years from the last chapter or whatever. And then, like, it took me a while to realize that the Portia in the first spider section is
yeah.
not the same Portia in the next spider section. And I kept going, man, like, how long do these spiders live? And like, they're just
Yeah.
calling Portia, it's just the same name, you know, throughout history.
Well,
There's Portia,
so do
there's
you think that
Bianca.
so the spiders could continue their like they could
They can pass on their
their
knowledge,
yeah, they
essentially.
call it their understandings, but it seems like they actually have memories of their past lives.
Right.
And do you think that's because I have two questions about this. Do you think it's because of the virus? And if so, do you think that was intentional? Like, did Kern plan for that as part of the evolution thing, or is it
Well,
just a side effect?
I think it's a
If it was
side
even part
effect
of it, yeah.
of the spider, because maybe like
You think
there's
spiders just do
some
that?
scientific thing that spiders like within a genome can do whatever. I think it's just a side effect.
Huh.
But the technology of the spiders was definitely
Yeah.
very interesting. Like you said, the webs and how they talk to each other, and then the you know, everything is like they talk about how the ants were actually making tools and using and metal
Yeah.
and things like that, where the spiders were using wood and like and the webs, like the webs were basically everything to the spiders.
Oh yeah.
And then they developed tools like using the shells of those beetles and making armor and different things like that. But their side of it was all like it's natural, you would call it, or like biological.
Biological. Yeah.
All their science is biological, where the ants were actually doing like they created that satellite dish and wires, and they were using like fire and metals and different things. And really the only reason that the spiders were able to survive the ants was because they were able to manipulate the virus.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, almost the ants technology was almost better than the spiders in that in regard of just pure like what they had developed. But the spiders, since they were you know, like a hive mind, I just don't think they were able to, I don't know, develop like a.
And so you talking about it. Actually, I think I just had an epiphany with it. So the spiders are individuals. The ants had this hive mind, and they basically only operated off of like pheromones and scents and you know all of this. But they had a shared consciousness versus individualism, and that's also probably why they can work together as a computer, is because they're all using their individual, you know, pieces to process something together. It's still unusual to think about.
They're like the Borg chip.
Yeah, they're very similar to the Borg. But it's still interesting to think about, or confusing. So
both.
Yeah,
there's a lot of confusing.
Imagine a computer of ants, right? a computer of ants, how would you like interface with it? In order for a computer to be useful, you have to write programs. How do
Right.
you, and that's kind of what Fabian was learning to do. What Fabian was creating various pheromones and all these different ways to manipulate the ants to do what he wanted them to do. I guess in a way, that's kind of like he was like a programmer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Well, I think that once they realized how to manipulate the virus, that definitely helped because I think the virus is what allows them to do that. Like,
hmm.
you know, they like you said, Fabian figured out the pheromone things, and then he figured out these other things that, you know, the catalyst to all this is this virus. And
Yeah.
it changed the way, I mean, who knows what would have happened with the monkeys if they would have been, you know, as crazy of a you know, like a leap as far as, you know, like human evolution.
Yeah.
But
I
um
going into this book, what I thought it was going to be was advanced evolved monkeys versus advanced evolved spiders, and the humans were like caught in the middle. Like before I
Planet of the Apes with spiders.
yeah, I thought that it was because I had heard someone talk about this book on YouTube, but I hadn't actually read anything, and it was a spoiler free review, so I didn't really know. You know, that just based on that review, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be like monkeys versus spiders," you know, in space. And the book is not that at all. It's not a very
No,
and even with the humans, once I saw the setup of the plot, I thought, oh, the humans, by halfway through the book, the humans are going to have to go to the planet and they're going to have to figure out how to survive there. And then we're going to get some real like space marine shooting giant spiders
that's what I
action.
thought was going to happen too.
And it never really, you got that in the last chapter and it was really good. But by then you're like, well, am I rooting for the spiders or am I rooting for the humans? What did you feel like in that moment? Were you rooting for the spiders or the humans?
See, I really like Lane and Card and Holston.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Lane
um,
Holston, yeah.
Karst, he kind of like
He got his moment to shine in that
he
last
had his
chapter,
moment to shine,
but
and then
he's
fucking
inconsequential for the
Guyon.
rest of the book.
I didn't like Guyon either.
Gillian, yeah. I
But
like
once they were gone, and I
yeah.
was like, because that's what when you come into the last chapter and they're coming to this planet, I'm like, it's going to be Holston and Lane, and I'm like, I can't see them battling the spiders, but what else is going to happen? Like that
Yeah.
they're built. It's almost like they were building to this, and then like, of course, my thinking too is when they actually got to the planet at the end and they saw like this just vast web covering the planet with like
Yeah.
satellites of web and space and all this stuff, I would have been like, yeah, we're going to turn this ship around. Like,
Let's go try the gray planet again.
let's go back to the gray planet. Cause like, I mean, that would have been quite
Yeah.
shocking to come across. But I mean, like both had their, like the spiders, I was really rooting for, which is weird again with the whole time thing. Like sometimes like the first half of the book, Portia is like a great character, and like you're basically getting the evolution through her perspective.
Yeah.
And then like there's an iteration of Portia that's just like kind of douchey, and then it's like and then it kind of goes back to the good Portia, and then like but
I
then you have Fabian that comes in. You really like him. And he kind of took over him, and Bianca kind of became
yeah, I think by
my
the end,
favorite.
yeah, by the end I really liked Bianca. But then Portia is like Bianca's not really in much of the last chapter. It's all Portia.
Right.
But yeah, I there was because they were kind of doing this thing where it's like they're playing different roles of like Bianca was like almost like I was the scientist that started noticing a lot of them. I'm gonna say Da Vinci because I can't remember the name of the other one, but like Bianca was this like revolutionary thinker and inventor, And they noticed that, we noticed that the stars are moving differently than this one light in the sky. That must mean that it's satelliting around the planet instead
Right.
of the other stars. Like they were
And they
representing other figures in our history. They were kind of drawing parallels to that, and it's like
right.
crazy to think about, like something other than humans having that consciousness and solving those problems,
And
and
it was
being like in society, being like shunned. Like Bianca gets like locked away at one part of the book, like because what they're saying goes against
right.
their belief in what the satellite is.
I kept thinking of Galileo
That's what I
with
was trying to
Bianca.
think of. That's what I was trying to think of.
We orbit the sun, not the other way around.
I was thinking of that whole thing I said. I was thinking about Galileo. I just couldn't think of the name. Yeah, and so there's. I found one of the most interesting parts of the book is whenever the spiders become advanced enough that they know that the satellite is not God anymore.
Right.
But up to that point, building to that moment, they basically pray to this thing in the sky. They talk to it and they don't know if it can hear them.
Right.
Portia asks it for things and she doesn't know if it's listening. It's like an exact parallel to to praying and to God and to believing that something is out there that's in control. But then they get to a point where they're able to answer God's questions, because God sends them all these math problems and they're able to answer the questions. They're able to ask God questions, and they're even able to build like a common language where they can talk back and forth. And then they become so advanced that they're more advanced than the satellite and then Dr. Kern. And so they can tell by Kern's responses back to them that, like, well, we're asking God these questions and
she doesn't know the answers.
She doesn't know the answers.
Things.
Yeah. We can't be smarter than God. So, this must not be God.
I put this quote in the thing here, and I think it was Bianca that said it. I can't be 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's Bianca. But it says, "Belief in the Maker made us who we are, but now holds us back."
Yeah,
like because they got to the point where they were ready to take that next step, but to take that next step, you're going to have to deny God.
Yeah,
and like Bianca knew this, and I think that's when she's talking to Portia, when around the time when they first started contacting Dr. Kern. And I think some people were, some of the ants, like God, what's the name of the main colony of spiders?
There was like trees, and then there was
like 7 trees, and there was like C something, whatever. But like
all, but yeah.
A lot of the satellite colonies were starting to, spurn God.
Yeah.
And then, that the main colony was like, no, that's blasphemy. We'll excommunicate you or like, execute you. And, but you see when it jumps forward again, that they did spurn it, and the technology jump was like unreal, like what they were doing. And then, they, the big thing was like who was sending the signal, and you see that like with Portia, like they, like you said, they see the thing coming around, and then they figure out that there's this message, and then they figure out that there's somebody that's up there, and they still think it was God. And then on the flip side, Dr. Kern thinks she's God.
Oh, yeah. She
definitely thinks she's God. And she played along with it.
Who did Kern remind? Is there any historical figure that Kern reminds you of? I said minds instead of minded. That gives you a hint as to who I think she reminds me of.
Minds.
I thought Kern reminded me of Elon Musk
Okay.
as this completely self-absorbed, like, only Dr. Kern. I don't want to be extremely insulting to Elon Musk, but Dr. Kern didn't just pay a bunch of scientists to do something that she took credit for.
Right.
It seems like she really knew what she was talking about. But like, I think she was like just completely self-absorbed, but yet doing something good for humanity. You know what I mean? It's just, she's doing it for what we would consider all the wrong reasons. Although
Right.
who cares if it's good for humanity? Like no one can deny the fact that Elon Musk put electric vehicles at the forefront. Like people care about that now where
Right.
they didn't before. And as much as he would like us all to believe he did it because he wanted to save the world, truth is he did it because of his own ego. He wants to be known as the person that did that.
Yes.
And that's the way Kern
Same
reminded
thing with
me.
space travel.
Yeah, the same thing. Yeah, we're going to space again. SpaceX and what's the Amazon one? I can't remember.
Blue something in it.
But the thing is like, I think a lot of this ambition is not from altruism. It's because like they're just self-absorbed in that way. They want to be thought of as that. And Kern just seemed like exactly that type of person.
What I liked was the part where like,
which is very godlike, by the way. Like that's
yeah, exactly. Like when she first comes to the real, like whenever they first contact her, because essentially she's in deep, she's asleep, and it's supposed to wake her up whenever someone finally contacts.
Yeah.
And then, once she realizes that, something is down there, which she thinks are the monkeys.
Yeah.
Which is weird too, because she saw the monkeys get destroyed, but like she convinces herself or whatever that it's the monkeys.
She talks about that. There's a chapter where she talks about how she intentionally builds blocks in her own mind and not see things. But at this point, she is an AI, not Kern's real consciousness. And so it's interesting that the AI would also do that. Because it's important not to mess up its program.
And it was when she first realized that it weren't the monkeys, she considered this whole thing a failure. Like, this is like, and she sees like because the people in the Ark had sent the satellite or the little thing down, and were like, got the picture of the spider, and they send her that picture, and she doesn't know that that's who it is at first, but then she comes to realize hundreds or whatever years later that it's the spiders that have done that. And she's like, this is an utter and total failure. And then later on, she embraces that, hey, it did work. Mm-hmm. And that they are like, they've become something even greater than what we kind of intended. And then she embraced the spiders, and then she went from God to being like one of the group, almost like her children instead of the deity. And then of course she becomes whatever, the ghost in the machine type thing. That whole thing was crazy.
Which, and other AIs, because at the end of the book, whenever they go on the new ship, they have a AI, but the AI is made from Kern. So so Kern kind of has like AI descendants now, which, like Bianca and the spiders, of course, they're going to carry the memories of their previous AIs, because it's all part of some data bank in like an army of ants somewhere.
Right. They go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we've talked a lot about what the spiders went through, and I think that is where this book shines. But I really appreciated the human side. I started off by talking about how the characters don't change, but that's like my one negative to the human story. I listened to a few reviews yesterday just to kind of be prepared and refresh my mind of all the different things that happen in the book. And almost everybody agrees with you that the spiders are the better side of the story. Matter of fact, I don't think I saw a single reviewer say they enjoyed the human story, but I really loved the human story. Like, I like the spiders a lot, but what carried me through the book was to find out what was going on with Holston and Lane. Like, I was really interested in that
Right.
story. Now,
I
that
was
being,
too.
I think it only, but I think if these were two separate books, the human story, the spider story can stand on its own, whereas the human story only works because it's in companion with the
Right.
spider story. But there's some interesting concepts there too, with like these generations of people that only know the ship. They were born in the ship,
Yes.
and they only know the ship. And you know, there's there. I thought the story of the Gullion, is that was the captain? What was the captain's name?
Yes.
So I like the idea that
Guyon.
Gullion, yeah. So he kind of had this story that was almost opposite of Kern's, where, you know, he came off as being super megalomaniacal, super authoritarian. Like he's definitely the like authoritarian figure in the book. But in the end, you find out that he's trying to upload his consciousness to the ship, and he knows that he is going to die, but he finds it as his responsibility to make sure that even after he dies, that the human race continues, and he thinks the only way he can do that is by putting his consciousness in the ship. It's not that he wants to live forever. He believes he will die. And I thought that was an interesting, it was like each of the human sections was like an episode of Doctor Who or Star Trek. It was like they all had this, they had this like they all had like a unique concept that dealt with time, and you had the same characters in each one, and each one kind of had like a beginning, middle, and end, and then they shove Holston back in a freezer.
Back in the freezer. One of my favorite things about the human chapters is like almost every one, Holston he wakes up the first time, and then like all this crazy stuff happens. Then he wakes up the second time, and he's like, okay, what's happening now? And he wakes up another time, and like each time, like until he gets to like the end where he wakes up, and he's just like, nope, I'm getting out of this thing. I'm going to find out exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
This has happened to me too many times where I wake up and somebody hits me or takes me away or something. That was really cool. Like the beginnings of those chapters.
I thought the story between him and Lane was really sweet too. Like
I did too.
I thought the ending of the book was going to be, so they give the reveal like the second to last human chapter. And by chapter, I mean the full chapter, not the sections.
Chapter,
but like, I think it's the second to last one where Lane reveals to Holston that she had frozen her embryo, and she was pregnant by him, and so she had kept him in cryo sleep, because that's one of the things I kept thinking is like, why wouldn't she just wake him up? Why wouldn't they wake him up? It seems like an awfully big story crutch for him to always be going to sleep and always waking up, so that we have this character to follow. And that's really what it was, but they gave a really good explanation for it, in that she wanted to keep him young so that she could guide the crew to the planet. And then once they got to the planet, she could then wake him up to then raise their child on a world. And I thought that was going to be the end of the book there. I thought, I thought, oh, this is going to be setting up for the next book. The next book is going to be, we got to kill all these damn spiders so that this kid can grow up somewhere in peace.
Exactly. I 100% thought the same thing. But then like, going along with that part of it, they, she tells them all this, and then they go, down to the planet, and the battle that you're almost expecting doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so it almost does, because they have the space battle where the spiders attack the Ark, and the whole time you're reading it, you're thinking that the spiders are going through there and just killing all these humans. But the big reveal is they weren't. They were actually they had manipulated the virus once again, and they were introducing that virus to the humans.
Yeah.
And it turns out that what they did is I guess they somehow manipulated it to where they wouldn't see the differences anymore. It would be more of how they can get along.
Yeah.
And so does that change? Like, I mean, I'm assuming this is a DNA type and manipulates. So like in here I put using the virus to call the human species, is their new cooperation real or just chemical?
Oh,
like,
yeah. It's chemical. Yeah.
Because the humans weren't. I mean, like, what's his name? The guy that was the Commander Karst.
Yeah.
Like he was. I mean, he was going out to destroy these spiders, and then like you think you see him get taken out, and then he comes back later, and he's just like, "Oh no, it's all good." Like I felt like the stereotypical high. Yeah, oh man, it's all good, man.
Yeah,
We're all cool now.
They're just like us. It's okay. They're just like us. That's
man.
what he
and
said,
then like, and then the other thing with the child, and which I don't know what to expect from the next book, but
yeah, I've got no idea.
The very last chapter has got to be again hundreds of years from where the humans and spiders finally start getting along, because they've built giant ships to go out into space and space travel, and they're all working together. But the one thing they don't mention in that chapter is the character names, really. So
they just mention her name because
right, but there's no Holston or Lane. So like, I mean, like,
they would have
they wind up freezing Holston again? That's what I'm saying. Like, so you got to figure
they lived old.
You got to figure they're dead.
Old.
But then does his
Lane died?
Somehow,
they explicitly say
that's
Lane
right.
dies.
Lane died, but but does the child, like, what happens there? Because if you take into consideration that very end is hundreds of years in the future, then Holston would have had the opportunity to whatever with the embryo, the child be born, and then generations of that child, at
least one
of his family could have been born. So it'd be interesting to see if next book they flash back a little bit.
She does say she does say her name's like Helen or something like that, Helen Holston Lane or something like that. She does say that her grandparents like brought them to the planet or something like that, or maybe she might have even said great grandparents. But yeah, she is the descendant of the child that was the embryo of Lane. I don't know if she's the second or the third in line, but
third or fourth, or
Holston would be her grandfather or great grandfather,
or great grandmother.
But she's definitely also supposed to be sort of like, similar, like give you the impression of
of both.
Yeah. But so speaking of the ending, so that whole last section I loved. However it would have ended, I would have loved it, because I was happy with the idea that the spiders were killing all the humans too. I was like, this is kind of like this whole book led up to this really dark ending, but I'll go with it. It's like Twilight Zone or something.
During that part, I was like, the humans stand no chance whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like no chance. And then they start taking them out, and I'm like, is this book going to end with them just basically killing everybody on the ship? Like, what is going on here?
I really thought so too. The thing I liked about, the moment where the human crew is going to face the spiders for the first time, here's what I had a few images in my head of what might transpire in the rest of the book. One was the humans go to they're going to like a shuttle pod, like a shuttle bay or something. And I was thinking they're going to annihilate all the spiders. And then that's going to be this last chapter. And then the end of the book, like the sort of the finale cliffhanger thing is going to be that they killed all but one, and Portia like reveals herself to Holston, who at this point, Holston is like the only human. He's the scientist in the disaster movie. He's the only one smart enough saying like, hey, we
Right.
need to stop the error of our ways. Let's learn from history here. But he's literally the last historian alive, so it makes sense that he would be the person doing
Right.
that. But I thought that might could be the ending. And then of course that wasn't it. But the thing I thought was special about that moment was that I was like rooting for both sides. Like I didn't want the humans to get annihilated by the spiders, but at the same time I didn't want the humans to kill all the spiders.
Right. Exactly.
And so like in that moment I really didn't know. And then whenever the spiders started like winning, I kind of thought, okay, this is going to be a story about how war is like brutal and like there's real people on both sides. This is a story,
Right.
and it essentially is. It's a story about empathy and human empathy, and how if we only could empathize and put ourselves in each other's shoes, that we might see the world completely differently. That's sort of the finale of the book, and that's what the virus is essentially. Is they have instilled this artificial empathy for the spiders,
Right.
in the humans. But I thought, okay, they're going to tell this. That's I landed on that as being the synopsis, but that they were going to tell it in a really brutal way. You're going to have to watch the spiders get killed. You're going to have to watch
Right.
the humans, because they even talk about the human children getting bitten by the spiders, or getting succumbing to the agent that they're putting through the ship. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be a story about like how like, yeah, it sucks. Like you can empathize with every person here, and yet they're killing each other,
Right.
And I thought that could be a conclusion to the book. But I also thought, how's there two other books? There's got to be more.
Right. Exactly. That's what I kept thinking. One of the things that was very chilling for me was the when the cult, or the people that were supposed to go to the moon,
Yeah.
they steal the shuttle and then they go to the planet, and then they leave the one lady.
Yeah, I
on
forgot
the
about
planet.
that. Yeah.
Like that was crazy, because like they made it out that she was relatively young. I mean, she
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, you're probably talking 20s, early 30s, and
There's
she lived her life being held captive by these spiders and being basically like a lab experiment until she died.
Yep.
And
But
that's crazy to think of, like what she went through.
No, I know. And there's some real like this book, in a way it almost doesn't feel like a classic sci-fi horror, because it didn't really deliver on the false notion. I had the notion that it was going to be Space Marines versus spiders, but really
Right.
the book doesn't really signal that. It just kind of, I don't know, that was wishful thinking on my part. But the book does have like this classic sci-fi horror in several parts, because
Oh, definitely.
there's that whole thing where the spiders are basically just watching this woman for her entire life. They don't understand her or the way she speaks enough to actually help her. They're not trying to harm her, but she's basically just trapped as this like lab rat. That's a horror story. That's a sci-fi horror story in itself.
Exactly.
And then there is the moment where the ants attack the humans on the planet. So the mutineers, they commandeer the shuttle, they go to the planet, and then these ants just start eating in their spacesuit and like tunneling through their bodies, and like
that was crazy too. Like,
yeah, there's like some really gory like sci-fi horror moments mixed in with this like really philosophical sort of slow burn sci-fi book. But also the thing that I think that from a storytelling perspective, it's really brilliant the way Adrian Tchaikovsky, I almost had it, Tchaikovsky. It's really brilliant the way he kind of like put the keys to the locks he would need later. So like
Right.
The virus is in the very first chapter of the book, and it turns out to be the most crucial piece of the whole puzzle. And it's there through the whole story. The whole story talks about the virus, and yet I never thought about it being until the last moments of the last chapter. I mean, I did kind of figure it out before the security officer comes on the radio and says, "Oh, they're just like us." But it was around
definitely
around that time I said, "Oh man, they're probably putting the virus throughout the ship." And but that's such a brilliant piece there. It's not like I read the book thinking the whole book, "Oh, eventually they're going to use this to get the humans on their side." I never, but yet he does talk about it. Even in the first couple of chapters, he talks about how this spider now will see that spider that's infected by the virus and know that okay, they are similar in a way and they should help each other. And a spider that's not infected by the virus, well, that spider, they don't make it a part of their community. That one doesn't become part of the evolution chain, and then another key to a lock later on is they knew how to infect the humans with the virus because they studied the body of that one mutineer that stayed on the planet. So if they had never told the stories of the mutineers, they never would have got a human on the planet to have that body there to then be able to put the virus in the humans.
Figure out how to use it. Exactly.
That's really smart.
It is.
It's really smart writing.
As far as the virus goes, so the virus is very interesting, and one of the first things that I thought about with the virus is, number one is how it worked as far as monkeys and stuff like that. So I was thinking about that, and then once you realize that the monkeys weren't going to be there, and then the basically the invertebrates on the planet are affected by it, but then he makes a comment in there somewhere where they're like, the scientists weren't thinking about the insects and things on the planet and how the virus would affect that. And I was like, that's odd because, I mean, even the spiders were using mice and stuff, which didn't. So one of the questions is why did the virus do certain things to certain things and not to others? And number one, let's say the monkeys did land on this planet, and
have still affected the spider. Yeah,
the spiders still would have evolved the way they did.
Yeah,
and in that case, before they even got to the point of understanding between humans or whatever, monkey humans and spider, the spiders would have taken those monkeys out.
Yeah,
because I mean, I just can't imagine that what they would have become, and if the spiders evolved the way they did and were, went from tiny insects to these giant spiders, there's nothing a human can do. I mean, honestly, if I think they said if all the spiders on this planet turned against humans, even the way it is, they would decimate the human population. And you got to figure that was going to happen there. So it's odd to me that in the development of this virus, someone didn't go, what's going to happen with the ants and the beetles and
all
the spiders?
The other stuff on the planet.
Where's Mothra at? There's got to be other things.
This should be that island, whatever that monster island thing is.
Yeah, Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Something crazy.
Because if you're in the business of terraforming a planet, you're in the business of looking at the details. It seems like someone would have looked.
That's what I thought too. I was like, some scientist at some point would have been like, are we going to create a giant dune world with worms that are 800 feet long? What's going to happen here? Because there's living creatures, not just.
So I don't. If what I'm about to say is the case, I don't think the book makes any attempt at explaining it. But what if there is just only so many resources on the planet? So basically, the planet only has enough resources to sustain one species. Other species may have been infected with the virus and tried, but because the spiders were already hogging all the resources, they never had the chance to like graduate to
Right.
that. And it just so happened to be that the spiders were the first things to sort of make it past that hurdle to hoard all the
Right.
resources.
Well, I mean, as far as, if you take just insects in general, I mean, spiders are probably one of the top of the food chain type insects there are, but
as
because
far
of
as
that, I
insects,
mean,
yeah.
and the other thing too is like, going along with the different various creatures and things that are on this planet, like, did they occur naturally? Because like they obviously terraformed a planet that wasn't sustainable.
Yeah, how did it get
So they
spiders in the
terraformed this
first
planet.
place?
How did they get? That's why I was thinking. Well,
Yeah.
how did they get spiders, ants, mice, and other things like that? Did they actually introduce those things
I
to the
thought,
planet?
because if they didn't, then why would they need to introduce the monkeys? Like if
Right,
if the
exactly.
idea is that they're just making evolution happen faster, so things would come from the primordial ooze and eventually become tadpoles and frogs and
Exactly.
all this stuff, then there would have been apes on the planet already, or some version of them. And
Right.
so why do they even need to send apes down in the first place? Yeah, I thought about that too. Is where did it just so they didn't even know there was spiders?
Right. Yeah,
'Cause
that
Kern,
whole thing,
before she
like,
puts herself to sleep, she kind of talks like, "Oh, there's nothing on the planet, but the virus
right,
will survive. The virus will be fine, and then we can put monkeys on the planet." And then whenever she wakes
right.
up, she kind of she loses that whole, like, that was something else she blocked off from herself, because she only mentions that like in the first chapter.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are
So
questions that come up, but I can get around those things
yeah,
because it's such a good story and stuff. I'm not worried, but like, you figure when they terraform, they're making like, there's probably, I even think they say in the ants, they're like they have groves of like fruit trees and different things like that. So they obviously put things on the planet, like plant wise, that are edible for whatever human species comes along. And I don't know, like, is it one of those things where, yeah, they bring like sort of like the fly, where they bring in maybe seeds or something, and there just happen to be spiders in that whatever they're doing, and then
yeah,
they accidentally get introduced, like, because I mean, you can go to the grocery store and get a bag of fruit and find a spider or an ant in it. And so maybe that was something. Same thing with mice. Maybe, we don't know what happened before they, got to the point where they had the satellite and ready. Maybe there were people going down to the planet, like doing like physical things on the planet besides just the terraforming and cross contamination type thing. They introduced things that maybe the scientists weren't
certain
aware of.
certain rodents just follow humanity even to the edges of
Right. I
space.
mean, you got to figure there's a roach in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, it's true. Should have been roaches.
Exactly.
Let me give you, but let me give you how I would have ended the book. As the is there any other bullet points you want to go over before we round out the ending? Because I'll give you this as the ending if you want.
No, I mean, like the only other thing in here that I've got is like, for the very ending, like who was sending the signal.
Oh yeah, okay. Let's talk about that after I give. All right, so let me give you my
Okay.
ending. We'll talk about that and we'll close out this episode. So I always do this where I think of how I would have written it. I need to write a book one day, although I don't think I
know,
could.
right?
I could come up with a story, I just can't write the small parts. Um,
Same.
but like how I thought it should have ended, which I mean, I was happy with the ending, but every chapter starts with Holston waking up, right? And the last chapter of the book basically ends, the last human portion, it actually ends on the spider portion, but the last human portion ends with, the whole ship has passed out. The spiders are making their way to like the main control chamber where Holston and Lane are. and they've basically given up hope. Um, I like how Holston had this moment at the end where he's like, I could bash as many spiders in as as I can with this staff, and he even like thinks about how this is kind of going back to the most primitive human instinct. The very first tool was like a club, and
Right.
and then he decides he's going to follow the other human emotion, the other earliest human emotion. And so he ends up just putting his arms around Lane, and then the spiders come in, and that's basically the end of the chapter. They pass out, I think. And I thought the next chapter should have started with Holston waking from cryosleep, and he has no idea how much time has passed
Right.
and doesn't know where he is. And it turns out that he's waking from cryosleep on the planet, and the spiders have then the reveal happens that the spiders had injected them with the virus, and that Lane made it to the planet, and was happy. And I would have told the story that way instead of having the shuttle go down and they get out and all that
Right.
stuff, just to continue that
I like the whole Holston thing.
waking up thing.
That was, like I said before, that was one of my favorite parts, was seeing what was going to happen when Holston woke up. So
Yeah. But all in all, I really liked the book a lot, and it has a good message. It's a message that's in a lot of sci-fi, but it has a good message of like, if we only had empathy and treat each other, the golden rule. We only treat
Right.
each other the way we'd want to be treated, and we saw each other as the same. It's a really common sci-fi message.
Yeah. There was a lot of those that he weaved into the story very well. All the points we talked about, but like, and he wasn't like, the science versus religion thing wasn't like, to me, wasn't preachy. Like, he wasn't like saying religion is terrible and you should
No, I didn't think
forego
so either.
religion for
Yeah.
science. Like, they kind of went hand in hand and gave you good perspectives on each side. And yeah, I mean, like, I love this book, and it hooked me from the start. I mean, when I've got through those,
dude, the
from the first two chapters, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. Like,
Me
this
too.
is so good.
Yeah, me too. I was really hooked. I my problem with getting through this book, the reason it took me so long, is because I did almost 100% audiobook, and I was listening to it at night, and I kept falling asleep. And it's not because the book wasn't good. It was just because, I'm not good at listening to audiobooks. It always makes me sleepy. And so
that's why I do it in the car.
I kept listening to the same, and see, that's another thing too, is I used to drive a lot more, so I could knock out portions, driving an hour to work and an hour home every day. I could knock out huge portions of the book, and then at night read the physical copy. But I basically did all audiobook, no driving, and I just kept falling asleep.
Right.
But and I also think it makes me experience it differently too, because there's some parts that I feel like I have a better understanding of because I would fall asleep and then have to go back and listen to that part over and over again. But then there was some parts where I was like, do I really remember what I listened to last night? Or
right.
did I fall asleep? But no, I really loved it. So what do you think the next book, what's your expectation from the next book?
So the ending of the book is however long in the future that the spiders and the humans are going on this voyage. You kind of think of like Star Trek Enterprise, they're going where no one's gone before type thing.
Yeah.
Searching out new life and blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out that it's because they've received a signal. And one thing that was mentioned throughout the book, and I can't remember exactly how many, there were 4 or 5 different ARC ships that were launched that were going to these various supposedly terraformed planets.
Right.
And they made he made a conscious effort to say, hey, we don't know what happened with these ships. So my guess is that signal is one of those ships, or maybe more than one, has actually found a planet, maybe not necessarily one of the terraformed planets, because they also said that one was pretty much the first one, and they kind of led you to believe that none of the other ones were completed, but they somehow found something, and now they're sending out a signal to see if they can attract these other arc ships. And my guess is, again, like when the humans showed up to the planet and saw the crazy spiders, except it's going to be reversed. Now a ship full of humans and like spiders are going to show up, and it's going to be like these other humans haven't had the virus, so they're going to be more like humans and probably not necessarily on board with this whole cooperation with a supposedly, for me it reminds me of, like, say, like the civil rights movement and era, like where you had white people that just could not accept the fact that a black person could be smart or do things, or
even though they saw it, they wouldn't accept it.
Even though they saw it. And I have a feeling that is what it's going to be like. This ship is going to eventually reach this thing, and the people there are just not going to accept the fact that a spider is on the same level as a human. And the same as back then, there were white people that were like, no, these, just because they're different doesn't mean they're any less. There's going to be, obviously the humans on that ship are not going to be able to convince them. I think, obviously he uses a lot of themes in his books, and I feel like that's probably going to be a predominant theme, is this whole, humans versus spiders. And
there actually was a little bit of a glimpse of that in the character. I can't remember her name, but there was one of the people on the ship,
one of the scientists.
Yeah, the one was like really. She showed no emotion. I almost thought in the first couple chapters, I thought she was going to turn out to be an android.
Yeah, I know, right?
And she wouldn't even say the word spider whenever they were talking about what was on the planet, like, because she just had
she couldn't
deal with it. Like, she had such a phobia of spiders. And then she's the one that is in like the glass container.
Yes.
And then the spider.
That was a good part too.
That was a really good part. Yeah.
Because that was one of those things where I was like, yes, get her.
I think that I'm kind of hoping that this next book is not connected to this one at all directly. I'm hoping that the next book is, like you said, it's another arc ship. They go to another terraformed planet, and we get another similar story to this one, only things play out differently in some way. And then maybe at the end, the ship from the end of this book, shows up. You know what I mean? But I kind of want like a disc, almost like an anthology. Like every book is just a different story, but set now in this world. Is kind of what I want to happen, because otherwise I feel like we don't really get to explore a lot of we don't want to explore all the same stuff anyway. So I mean, I get that, but like, in this scenario, it's kind of like when the Vulcans show up and like tell like once the humans, they reach warp speed or whatever, and then the Vulcans are like, okay, they're ready for us to go talk to them, and then they show up and they basically are like, all right, well, this is what the rest of the universe is like, and we'll help curate you to this new world, a new reality. Nice to meet you.
Right.
And I don't want, like, I don't see what story you could tell where it's just like the spiders show up and they're like, hey, guess what, guys? Turns out, these spiders are like us and we get along, and so the sea lions or whatever is evolved on this planet, you guys can be just like the humans, and you know what I mean? Like, I just don't.
Right.
I don't find that story as compelling. I kind of want something completely disconnected, but it be another terraformed planet, another group of evolutions, that sort of thing. I don't know, but I also have faith that whatever it is, this writer can do a good job, and I'll like it, whatever it is.
Oh, definitely.
So,
Beatus was the name of the scientist.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you would definitely have it, like as far as like just basically story, like arc and construction and stuff like that. I don't think it would be a wise thing for the next book to start with the ship showing up to this place.
That's what I mean.
You gotta have some sort of backstory from the other perspective, and then of course there's a third book, so you could almost have what happens on from the people who are sending the signal, and then the third book being the two groups finally come together.
And this one is a red planet, so I'm looking at the cover of the next book, and it also has this like satellite, this like destroyed satellite thing, and then there's like a very different ship over here. This could be the ship from the first book. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or that kind of looks like a biological, like a biological ship. Maybe that's what it is. But I have enough confidence in the writer that I think it'll be good.
Oh, definitely. He knocked this one out of the park, so I
can't imagine. He's got a bunch of other books we didn't know about too, so we'll look into those in the future. One thing I meant to mention earlier when we were talking about the humans, and I just want to shoehorn it in here. The book's called Children of Time. I think with the humans, not necessarily so much the spiders, but with the humans, the villain of the story, the thing that they're fighting against is time.
It's time. Definitely.
They only have so long before the human race dies out. They can only stay on the ship for so long. And it really felt like by the end of the book, in the humans chapters, the ship has been completely like, this is the last journey of this ship. If they can't get on the green planet, they've got nothing else. This is the very end of human existence.
There's a shitload of duct tape all over that ship holding things together. Like it is, there's literally time has run out for them.
Yeah. So I think that was kind of the theme of the human side, is that the enemy is time. I almost feel like it could be a possibility that the human side of the story was written as one story, and then he decided to put these two things together because it worked together better than it did in separate.
Right.
Because the human story could just, if they hadn't have ended with the spiders, the human story could have been a completely different book, just about almost like what Star Trek Voyager was, where they're just trying to make it back to Earth.
They're just trying to make it back,
and they know it's going to take so long to get there. It's going to take like 80 years, I think, in the case of Voyager. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I loved it.
I did too. So I was looking it up previously about adaptations, and supposedly it's been in development, but the last thing I saw was from several years ago that it was in development for a movie. So I don't know if maybe I didn't see anything else that said it's fallen apart, or if it's been going forward, but it's the first article I read was from 2017, and it had a screenwriter and everything attached to it. So I think that could be a very interesting movie. Like,
it would.
It'd be interesting to see how they would structure the movie. Like, if it would follow the book where you're flashing back and forth between two separate stories.
I think it would come together
or two movies, like a whole human movie, then a whole.
Oh man, and they could do. Oh my god, they could do like a whole what was the Barbie and Oppenheimer? They could do a whole Barbenheimer thing where they have a spider movie and a human movie they released at the same time in theaters, and people do like a double showing of it or whatever.
That would be fantastic,
dude. Why don't they let us run things? We have.
I know, right? Let's buy the rights.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I feel this way about every book, but I feel like it would do good as a TV show if it was like
Exactly.
a Netflix show or something, and they could do like this week. Are we getting a human episode? Or are we getting a spider episode? You know, like, am I going to get
Oh, that'd be good.
All right, well, let's end this thing. Or go ahead.
I give it. I mean, honestly, I give it a solid 9.5 out of 10. Like, I loved this book. I listened to. That's one of the books where I was like, man, I don't want to get out of the car because I listened to it the whole thing, and it was like I would get to work and I would sit in the car and like, man, I got like 3 minutes to get inside. Like, I gotta, but I don't want to get out of the car. I'm gonna be late. And like,
I give it 7 spider legs out of it.
Give it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next book.
Yeah, what do you want to do next?
That's a good question.
I had an idea. We can do Dark Tower if you want to. We're getting so close to the end now. I feel like I'm almost catching up with everybody, which I mean,
like, my thing with the Dark Tower, since I know what happens, like, this next book is just gonna rip the roof off. Like, you're gonna be like, for me, because I love this next book, and it really, like, again, this is that first book after the long delay from his accident and everything, and it turns the story on its head big time.
Well, if I'll tell you, if we pick something, I don't mind doing that one now if you want to, but if we pick something else, I promise here now that I will pick so that you don't have to wait 2 books before I do it. You know what I mean? It'll either be the next book or the next book.
My other book idea is one I've also read myself, but I also love introducing people to it, is that book Hex.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that book.
It is so good.
The way you described it, it sounds like I don't know if I'm 100%. I don't know. I'm interested in it. It seems.
It's one of the ending of that book. Just
I was the one that has. I was just
like,
ending.
oh my god! Like, it is so good. Like, but even the concept of the book, with new technology and in this era mixed with 1600s witchcraft kind of thing.
I'll tell you what I think is weird about it is all right, so the book we just read, Children of Time, it's obviously a fantastical story. It's sci-fi fantasy, but it's grounded in a world like where it's like, well, this could happen. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like, it's based on all the rules of the reality of this world are the same as ours. This Hex book is like, it's in a world where like a witch exists and people are just like so used to it that they made an app where they can track where the witch is in town and stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know if this is disconnected from, like, the rules of this world are so disconnected from mine. But
right.
But I also think I'm willing to try it. I'm willing to try it.
Well, so I was just looking up some info on it. It's
everybody I've heard talk about the book talks about how good it is and how insane the ending is. I've never heard anybody review this book without saying that the ending is something that they never would have expected.
So it's listed as 384 pages at 96,000 words. So I mean, it's not
a long book.
Huge book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably something we could definitely work in. I don't know.
The other idea I had was, maybe this is too similar to Children of Time, but I thought about if you wanted to pick a Star Wars book or I pick a Star Trek book.
Oh, yeah. Now there is I could definitely pick some Star Wars books.
I kind of want to, I am not like super into Star Wars, and I kind of want to learn more about it and see if,
so my
I'm into
thing with
Star
Star
Wars from the
Wars,
extent of the movies, but I've never read any
right?
books or anything like that.
So my like, I mean, just personal with the books is, so with Star Wars you have what's called legends, and then you
Hmm.
have the stuff that's been written since,
They
like,
consider canon now since Disney bought it.
since they've changed it. The legends books are absolutely fantastic. Timothy Zahn, like, a very big sci-fi writer, tackled the first uh series, and it's the Heir to the Empire series is what they should have done. Like, that should have been the sequel. And now you can tell with the new shows like Ahsoka and things like that, that a lot of the elements from that series they're bringing in, but having to change it obviously because of
Yeah.
the sequel movies. But they're trying to bring in a lot of stuff. Um, the hard thing about Star Wars is most of them are series.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's hard to find a standalone book.
Star Trek's the same way.
Um,
There are plenty of stand, but most of it is like, a 3-part or something like that.
yeah, that's what the Star Wars. A lot of them are 3 parts. Some of them are two, but but if we were to do a Star Wars thing at some point, I would love for you to listen to Heir to the Empire, because it's the bee's knees, man. It's really good.
I don't know any Star Wars lore outside of the movies, and I have some Star Wars comics, but I got them whenever I was so young that I didn't actually read comics. I would just look at the pictures.
Right.
But I think they're called Star Wars Legends, or they're Legacy or Legends, something like that. It might be Legacy. I was actually thinking, so I've recently been going through my comics and deciding what sets I want to complete and which ones I'm just going to try to sell or get rid of. And I was actually thinking I might want to see how much of this set I could complete. Yeah, Star Wars Legacy is what it's called. When did these look newer than what I have? Anyway, Dark Horse Star Wars.
Definitely. I mean, I've read. It's been a long time. I've read a few Star Trek books. I've read a lot of Star Wars books. Um, I think both of those are good ideas. The Hex book is a really good idea, and then again, I just can't wait for you to read Wolves of Kala.
Well, let's do that. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. I'm ready for it. I want to
Okay.
get through. I want to get through the Dark Tower series all the way. Just because it's such a cultural reference, and I feel like I thought I would never read these books, and I'm over halfway through it now. So why don't I get through it? That way I can feel like I'm a member of the club of being through the Dark Tower series.
So, okay, let's do Wolves. So I'll tell you, like, there's been, through the first few books, you've gotten here and there Stephen King universe references.
Yeah.
This is like,
well, is there a Stephen King book?
Huge Stephen King reference from stories.
Is
like,
there a
this
book?
One's major.
Is there a book that we should read between it then? Before?
No, I mean, this isn't spoiler or anything, but one of the main characters that gets introduced in this book is from a different Stephen King book, which is Salem's Lot. Fantastic book. You don't have to necessarily read it to read this book, because the character essentially tells the quartet his story.
Oh.
And so you kind of get a synopsis of some of the things that happen in that book. Now, Salem's Lot is a fantastic book, well worth reading, but it's not integral to understand this. Like, he'll fill you in on who he is and how he got to where he is and all this stuff. But from this point on, the greater universe stuff will be coming in large quantities.
Yeah, I'm down for Wolves of Ka. So I'm just looking at it. It's not as long as the last one we read.
No,
It's not even as long as the Dark Tower.
yeah, no. This one, the next two are pretty big after this. So, and again, like I know we talked about before, you like the world exploring and time stuff, and like
Yeah,
so this is going to be like
I like all
right up your alley.
the reality bending stuff.
Yes, this is going to
Yeah.
be right up there.
All right.
So
All right.
there, and again, there's like I said, we can. There's only one story that's coming up like throughout the next three books that I think we should read, and it's a short story. So
Okay.
that I think is important to read before, but that's before book 7. So we got plenty of time to introduce that. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll start reading. I got like 6 credits on Audible. I'll go ahead and get it. I'll go ahead and get it tonight.
shoot, okay. So since I finished Children of Time,
Yeah.
I've read the new Stephen King book, Holly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've done a short story, and now I'm on the new Robert Galbraith book, Running Grave, which Robert Galbraith is the Tom Noon of J.K. Rowling,
Oh, okay.
and it's a detective series, and it's really good. But those books are huge. Um,
I'll
I'm listening to that.
what I'll do is I think what I'll do cuz I need to lose some weight anyway. I think what I'll do is I used to listen to audiobooks on the treadmill, and I think now that I'm not driving to work every day, which is also why I'm
Right?
gaining weight because I'm just sitting my fat ass down all day instead of actually.
Yeah.
I'll commit to doing a chapter or two on the treadmill. That way, I'm not going to fall asleep, but I'll still also listen at night. But I'll
Right.
do on the treadmill. That way, I won't fall asleep, and that'll get me through it.
Yeah.
Um,
And we should do another show. I mean, it's still a longer book, but we should do definitely another show or two in between.
oh yeah, I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to start tonight, but I just wasn't quite prepared, and I hadn't warned you. But I don't think I'm going to edit this episode. For one thing, there was nothing really much to edit out. I mean, I think this would be
No.
fine. I'm just going to upload it. But I think going forward, because I've gotten so far behind on editing podcasts, because I'll record them and then I'll say, well, I'll do it on the weekend. But then on the weekend, there'll be like family stuff. And then I'll say, well, I'll just do it after work one day. But then after work, I'm tired. And then it's time for us to record another episode. And so
Right.
I get behind. I think if we live stream them, even if nobody shows up to watch it live, at least I don't have to edit it. We can just do it.
Yeah, it's still there.
We
Yeah,
can just do it
exactly.
live and just leave it uploaded.
I'm down with that. That's fine.
So I think I want to start doing that. And did you see my comic video? I made a comic book video.
Yeah, I saw it pop up, but I haven't watched it.
I want to start doing more of those too. Those they take editing, but it's short. It's not like it was like
Right.
a 8-minute video. And in it, I told people to go listen to this. So I'm gonna try to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with that because I mean, like we I mean, I don't think there's a lot of stuff that we've come across where we've need to edit a ton of stuff out, other than like if you're going to put an intro in it,
Right.
afterwards
Yeah.
or something like. But throughout the body, I mean, I think we're
I
pretty
like.
good as far as that.
I like doing intros and stuff, but we end up uploading less, and I think it would be better if
Right.
we produced more content that was easier to produce.
Well, I mean, we can live stream an opening too. I mean, we don't.
Yeah.
That doesn't need to necessarily be something we put in afterwards.
Yeah.
We just come up with some.
What I keep thinking about that I would edit in this episode, but I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to upload it. But what I would have edited in is I like in some of our old Stormlight Archive videos, I went and picked out interesting parts of the conversation and then put them as little short things at the beginning so that you knew to listen to the whole thing
Right.
to get to those good parts.
Yeah, that's
But again, it's just if I put that restriction on every episode, I'm just gonna be back in the hole of like,
well, I mean those the the issue with
we could fake it.
the
We'll just
well, yeah, exactly. The issue with the Sanderson books and now with the King books is,
yeah,
I mean, they're huge. So
yeah,
to do stuff like that, I mean, that's a ton of stuff you got to go through.
yeah.
Um, and if someone is generally wanting to, watch us live or listen to afterwards, I don't think
Zord
that's
Commander will
going to
show
matter
up.
that much.
He always
Yeah,
shows
exactly.
up.
But yeah, I mean, like I'm good with. I don't mind the live streaming that way. Like, we had the issue where we were with the Dark Tower where we were doing shit, like you said, we were doing shows, and then we still had that one to release and
I
things like
had like
that.
four
So
episodes. I had like 4 episodes on my computer at one point, and yeah, that got bad during that time period, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Is just let's just live stream it, and that I think it would be better to do it every week, with less production, just
yeah,
but that it's consistent. And I was also going to say, because I work from home Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, maybe Wednesday is a good day for us to maybe get on a
yeah,
regular schedule of just doing that.
yeah,
So
I'm down.
so by next week I'll be set up to live stream, and we'll just do it that way.
Okay, yeah, that works for me.
All right. Well, this was a great one. I really enjoyed Children of Time. Great book, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Yes, peace out.